So a lot of people ask me in the comment section below my videos how I find the RAW mode in the camera of the Huawei P30 Pro. And I should say, when I was using the RAW mode in Zurich a few days ago, I was quite shocked what I saw. And so I decided today, it's evening now in Zurich, I decided to try out this again under best possible conditions. So my P30 Pro is mounted on a tripod. Everything is stable, no vibrations. The scene is fixed. My subject is my little garden gnome here, so let's tap on it to get focus and metering light. And let's now try the whole sequence of options we have. First of all, in the settings, I'm at 40 megapixels, so I want to get the best resolution. Let's focus and meter light. Let's get this correct. So I think that is what I should do. That's perfect. Let's take the picture. If you look at the result, I think it's a good picture. It's okay. The gnome is sharp, looks nice. Let's go back into the camera. Let's enable now the AI mode here on the left hand side. It recognizes, you see this on the right hand side, clouds here, but that's not the main motive, it's not the main subject, it's all about that little gnome. Let's take the picture again. Let's see what we get here. Again, looks okay, is I think an okayish picture. But now when you go to the professional mode, and in the professional mode you can actually also choose 40 megapixels, and at the bottom of that screen you see that I have chosen to also store the picture in RAW. And that's what I'm going to do now. So let's focus and meter light, and now let's take the shot. It says saving. And by the way, I should probably mention, in terms of ISO, it's on auto, shutter speed is on auto, exposure compensation is on auto, and autofocus, well, that's in continuous. Let's do this again and let's go to single shot to be on the safe side. So we take the same shot. Nothing is distracting it. Actually, in order to test whether the focus is working, let's look at my hand. Let's focus. So my hand is sharp now, the background is blurry. Let's go back to the gnome and take that picture, and then we got it here. Alright, so that's basically what I wanted to show. We could also go to manual focusing here, and let's see what we get then. So now we're in manual focus. I'm not sure if this is infinity or what it is. Probably it is infinity, because as I showed in another video on exposure and focusing on the Huawei P30 Pro, even if you focus on things only a few meters away, they will be sharp and everything behind them will be in focus too. So let's take that shot again. Let's see what the JPEG is saying to my focus method. Looks actually quite sharp. I would even claim it looks better than the the autofocus here. Anyway, so I think we want to now take these pictures and put them side by side on the computer and have a look at it. But what I wanted to show you first is, don't be shocked. If you look at the RAW files now in the preview function of the phone, they look not really good. And I'm going to test this out on the computer, how they look like. So first of all, where do you find it? If you go to the File Explorer and you go to internal storage, there is your folder storing everything related to the camera. And in that folder you find another folder called RAW, and then if you scroll down to the very bottom, we find the last taken shot. And if you look at that picture, first of all, it's not post-processed, of course. And second, if you zoom in, that garden gnome looks really, really blurry. And let's now go to the computer, let's put the picture side by side, and let's see what the conclusion is we take from that little exercise. So I'm now in Lightroom here, and I have both pictures side by side. These are the best shots I got out of the phone. On the right hand side you see the JPEG. On the left hand side you see the RAW file, which is a DNG, stands for digital negative. Just as a side information, the DNG has about 85 megabytes file size, and the JPEG has about 10 megabytes file size. Now, of course, here no post-processing occurred on the RAW file, and you see the JPEG is nicely saturated, has good exposure compensation by post-processing within the camera of the P30. And if we zoom in now, the shock from the preview of the phone itself, which I showed in the video before, basically is not, doesn't materialize here. So if we look at both pictures, they are both sharp and clean. And I think the preview function on the P30 is just crap. It doesn't work because if you go back in the video, you see if you look at the RAW file on the left-hand side in the preview function of the phone, it looks blurry, it looks ugly. It has no details, not good. But here, if we drag and drop the files to the computer, it looks much, much better. Now, I do not want to discuss here the difference between normal photo mode, professional photo mode, AI photo mode, all of that. I'm just interested in, is there any way where I can leverage 85 megabytes in a RAW file compared to 10 megabytes in an in-camera processed JPEG file, and get more out of that picture on the left-hand side than the camera was getting out by in-camera JPEG processing. That's all that interests me at this point in time. So before we process the RAW file coming out of the P30 here, let's briefly see if we really have matching pictures here. And on the right-hand side in Lightroom, you see the metadata coming out of the EXIF. And you see here the shot has been taken at 7:49 p.m. 32 seconds. If we click on the right hand side, we get exactly the same data. So this truly is the JPEG file coming from that shot in the professional camera mode, and this is the RAW file coming in the shot from the professional mode on the P30. There are tiny differences. So here you see an ISO of 56 and here you see an ISO of 50. I don't know what it is. And also if you look at both pictures, the resolution also supposed to be 40 megapixels is slightly different. So this is the resolution of the RAW file here. And just focus with your eyes on this part here. And this is the resolution of the JPEG file. And that happens sometimes that if you shoot in RAW or in JPEG, also on other cameras, the resolution slightly deviates, but not that much. All in, it should be 40 megapixels on both pictures. So I was now processing the last minutes the RAW file here, and you see on the left hand side the original RAW file, and on the right hand side the RAW file as I had it after post-processing in Lightroom. Let's briefly look at the changes I made. So I was working a little bit on white balance, I was working a little bit on exposure, I was taking down the highlights to get more contrast and structure into the sky. I was boosting up the shadows to get these dark areas here on the left-hand side with a bit more structure, and to also get more light into the dark areas. The same I did to the blacks. And I was also increasing clarity, dehaze, vibrance. Saturation I left at 0 because I typically think playing with saturation makes photos looking really unnatural. And down here in that section, I was introducing a bit more reddish into the picture because that one is a bit greenish and I think this one is more natural. And I come to the comparison with the JPEG out of the camera in a moment. I was keeping the sharpening as the default value of 40, but I will probably introduce a little bit of noise reduction, not too much. Maybe 25 is just good. And if we zoom into the picture, let's do this here. I think we now have some of the noise removed and the picture actually looks pretty clean and pretty okayish to me. Also, if you look at different parts of the picture here, for instance at the brush, you see clearly how we brought more light into the shadowy areas. And I think the way this picture appears to me is very natural. Let's maybe look at this one here. Also, if you look at this part of the picture, I think we were able to get quite some more details, and I should probably call it dynamic range out of the RAW file here. So that's what we did. Maybe the last thing I should look at is these little lights here. If you look at them, also here they look as they really look in reality. I think the reflections from the rainy ground are nice. So that all looks good. So let's go back into the library mode on Lightroom and let's compare the two pictures we had before. So on the right hand side we have the JPEG, on the left hand side we have the post-processed RAW file, and I think we actually did a good job. So this picture here is a little bit oversaturated, and I think that's a general phenomenon we see on smartphone cameras, and Samsung is the master of it. They oversaturate and oversharpen a picture. This one here looks really like it looks in reality. Let's zoom in for a moment to see them again side by side. That blurry look from the preview function on the phone directly is gone, and thanks God we don't have these blurry pictures if we look at them from the computer perspective. And I also think in certain areas of the picture we leverage dynamic range of a RAW file. If you look at that picture here, the zoom level in this particular part of the photo, I think the one on the left hand side is probably slightly superior, not too much. Let's look at the lights here. I'm not sure on these little lights here. I think the left hand side is probably more natural. That one here is a little bit over contrasty. But in general, I would say that the post-processed RAW file is at least as good as what we got out of the camera. But having said that, remember and keep in mind, this one here has 85 megabytes. This one here has 10 megabytes. So the question really is the additional level of information you get out of the RAW file really worthwhile the file size you have to pay for if you go for RAW shooting on the Huawei P30 Pro? I'm not sure about the right answer to that question. Please leave me comments. Please share your own thoughts and views on RAW file shooting on the Huawei P30 Pro. And maybe as a last remark, I'm quite sure if we get the new firmware, first of all, some new functions will be added, like the dual view video mode, which is not yet on my phone. Second, I'm quite sure Huawei, in that cooperation with Leica, will get an improvement, hopefully, on RAW files and really make it worthwhile to have more than 8 times the file size on the RAW file than what we have on the JPEG file. Again, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you again on my channel.